What is Dollar Gujarati?
How do Gujaratis do business?
What kind of businesses can you do in America?
How can you grow your business?
How do you get your first customer?
How can you raise funding?
When should you be frugal?
Can you start a business as an immigrant?
Why is sales important?
Where are all the investors?
Which is the correct model for your startup?
Find these answers and more in season 2 of Dollar Gujarati. So, hi everyone. We have Shah on our show today. Jay is an old friend from our engineering days from DJ Sangvi, and he's been through a lot of amazing journeys through his professional career. So Jay came here to the United States for his master's in computer science. He then worked with Facebook for a few years, and now finally he's figured out the solution of how to start his own company as an immigrant. Welcome on our show, Jay, and it's glad to have you.
Hey, Daksh. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. I've been following all your podcasts, and it's amazing. Like, there's a lot of good value out there.
So Jay has started his own company called Blackbox.ai. It does automated media buying for social media. And maybe Jay, you can start off right from there
Sure.
about what does Blackbox do?
Absolutely. So when I was at Facebook, I was working essentially with large advertisers who would spend like north of $10 million every quarter. And what we realized was there's a lot of inefficiency in how they would spend media. Like even though they had a large team, they would not understand how to effectively spend their dollars on Facebook or any other social platform. So what we did was we took our learnings at Facebook and realized that okay, there's a problem here that we can solve. So we came up with this SaaS-based platform, which is called as Blackbox, where we essentially control the media buying through algorithms. So think of like we decide the targeting, the bidding, the budgeting, everything for the advertisers. They just start to tell us what's their budget and how much, like what's their KPI, like what do they want in return, and we'll optimize towards it.
And how do you really go about doing this? Because I know that there are a lot of professionals who are doing this as humans, right? Like they
Right,
are account managers, or
right,
you can call them different things in different
right.
companies, but there are actually humans who are doing the actual buying and then the portfolio of media spends. So how
Right.
does your software really, replace in a sense that human being?
So we are not trying to replace them. We are just trying to ease their work. So if you think about a media buyer, they would spend probably 70% of their time thinking about like what should they bid, what should they budget, what creative should they use for a particular campaign, when should they run it, whom should they target. So we are trying to take all that guesswork away from them and then show them a dashboard that okay, like this is the state of the system right now, and this is where your next opportunity lies. So they can just select all these things, and within minutes, we'll have a campaign created for them that otherwise would take probably 6 hours. So like the time that they save, they can then dedicate that to like the strategy thinking, the strategical thinking.
Can you share an example of a recent client that you've done this for?
Sure. I don't know if I can tell the name, but it's an IPO company, and they have probably like $3 million every month that they spend on Facebook. So what they did is like they gave us a part of their budget and they asked us that okay, can you make it more efficient? So the way it works within our industry is like there are a bunch of partners or a bunch of competitors, and they'll give each of them a particular budget, and then they say that what is the performance that you get out of them. So for example, there's a very common term which is called as return on ad spend, which is like if you spend $100, how many dollars can you recoup within the first 7 days? So that's the metric that they evaluate all of us against, and then they'll say that okay, whoever has the best return on ad spend will scale marketing towards marketing, like will put more marketing dollars towards that platform.
Okay. So these companies also, in a sense, are trying out companies like Blackbox, right? So there's Blackbox,
Right,
there's ABC, there's XYZ,
right,
and then they're allocating small portions of their
right.
ads of their marketing budget and seeing which one has the best ROI.
Best return. Right.
And then so this would be like a proof of concept of sorts. And then like if your
Mhm.
company has the best results, then they allocate,
Then
then they
they'll
sign a contract with you basically.
like they have a contract already signed on with us, but most of the competitors, the way we work is like we charge on the amount of money that flows through our platform. Like we don't have a fixed monthly subscription. So
Oh, okay.
like the more money that they spend on our platform, the better it is for us.
Okay. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because then the incentives are also aligned, right? Because
Yes.
so if you are giving them better results, they'll spend more money with you.
Right.
And when they spend more money with you is when you will also earn more income.
More.
So,
Right. Right.
so your income
And
is completely tied to the performance of their
performance.
ad
Yes.
spends.
Right. So only when they see like a dedicated result, that's when they scale more. So like as you mentioned, like the incentives are very aligned.
Awesome. Yeah. So where did you come up with this idea from?
So we like there were two of my co-founders who were actually already working on it, and then this was something that I had thought that okay, like this is not very difficult to build, and there's so much need for it. So why not why why not someone just build it out? And I had actually asked one of our friends to build this probably 3 years ago, and like she thought that this is not a very good idea. So then we just skipped it. Uh, but yeah, so like I saw both of them working, and like we just started chatting more about it. That okay, like I'm also interested in this space, and then we got together.
And these co-founders of yours, they were working with you at Facebook, right?
Yes, they were previously at Facebook. They quit probably a few months before I left or I joined them. So they started it, and then I joined the team.
Oh, awesome. And yeah, so this is actually a great segue into one of the most burning questions that we all of us are having as immigrants, you know. So, I mean, you came here on a master's and you were on an H-1B visa. And I don't know what your green card situation was, right? Like the entire I-140 process, EB2,
Right.
EB3. These are terms that are familiar with
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
most immigrants here. So, so how did you manage that legal component of, you know, like you have to be employed to be in the US on an
Right.
H-1B visa. So how did you end up navigating navigating towards starting your own company?
For sure. So like I had been trying to start my own company probably since the last 4 years. Like since I left USC, I was actually trying to work on a startup there as well. That did not go through, and like I had to search for a job. Since then, I was trying to start a company, but um, as you mentioned, that all of the people are talking about these things, but actually there was no clear way that okay, how can we build it? In last year, I met a few VCs as well who said that okay, they can help us, and that's where like they showed me okay, there is some way that you can get this done. So like on digging more about this, I realized that there are several components like depending on what visa are you on, like are you on an H4, are you on an H1? Essentially like there are a few components that go into like making sure that you're cornered from a legal perspective as well. So one is like the employer employee relationship, the other one is like the ability to show funds and even contracts that okay, you have sufficient funds in the bank, and people are willing to work with you again in the future, so that you can show them that okay, you have a runway for probably like 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, can you
You see
go
through.
like into a little bit more detail? So, like you're an employee at Facebook uh,
Mhm.
on an H-1B visa, and how do you transition from there to working with Blackbox?
So there are a bunch of ways, and like probably keeping the names aside because like each company will have its own policy. But essentially, like there are ways where company would allow you to work on other startups as well. So like at Facebook when I was there, I was legally allowed to work on my other meditation company. Like I had got the approval from Facebook saying that okay, you are allowed to be a founder of this company. So like that is a separate component, but the legal component of USCIS essentially says that on H1B, you can only be allowed to work for one company. Like that is what most of the people are aware about, but that is not true.
Oh, I mean, this is what I really knew, right? Like I can only have
Yes.
one employer.
No.
So,
So you are actually allowed to work on multiple. Uh, you're allowed to work with multiple companies. So there's a concept of concurrent H1B where you're allowed to like you have your own primary H1B and then you can have another H1B which allows you to work with another company legally.
okay, so basically you have two H-1Bs where one is attached to employer A and the second one is attached to employer B.
Right.
Uh, okay, and if that is the case, then still in both cases you are still an employee, right? So
Yes.
how do you really work around owning a company and being an employee? Like, do you have separate entities?
Yes, so you cannot like by the law you cannot actually own a company here. Like if you own a company, you cannot operate it, and if you operate it, you cannot own it. So like they are two disjoint things. But there are some ways like you can work with some people to like let them own the company, but you still run it. Because like from a USCIS perspective, they want to see that okay, someone has the ability to hire or fire you.
Gotcha. So basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Mhm,
So you can be employed with an employer A, and perhaps your friend or your family member is who is also on an H1 can
mhm.
own a company B,
Right,
right? And now from A, and the company's name is B, right? So from A, you can also file your concurrent H1 for employer B.
right,
Okay, so
right. So
in this case, you are still an employee at A and
mhm,
B, and the
right.
owner owns B, but that owner can be related to you.
I don't know if they can be a family member, but I'm sure like they can be friends. Like you can work with your friends on it,
Okay, but
and
in
that is just one criteria. So like
okay,
USCIS has a bunch of things. So this is one. The second thing is you need to show sufficient funds in your bank because like if you're coming on an H1B, for example, whatever your salary is, probably it's ₹100, $100, then you should be able to show $100 in your bank so that you can pay out your salary.
okay, and so in our example, employer B has to have that much funding, that many resources, or maybe not in cash, but like a line of credit that
Yes, and you have to present that to USCIS and make a case that okay, you have a sufficient runway to support your employees for X number of months.
got it. So that is actually about owning a company, right? So if I own a
Right.
company in the US as an immigrant, I need to be able to prove that I have enough funds to pay my employees for 12 to 18 months.
No, that is not related to owning a company because like you can start a company today as well. Like you can start a company on an H1B that no one is stopping you from that.
Okay.
But like the thing that comes in is like when you file for your H1B with any company, you have to file for an LCA, which is like your labor conditions, or I don't know the full form for it, but essentially you mentioned that okay, this is the position that you're applying for, and this is the amount of money that you'll be willing to pay for this position.
Okay.
So
So
like when
in
you
the
do that, you go
okay, so
ahead.
in the case that this employer B is employing an H1B candidate,
Right,
at that time you have to have proof of funds.
right, right.
Got it. Okay. So
Oh,
yeah, so I guess it's
I have a question. Is there a full-time limitation on this? So you can work full-time only for one employer, or can you do it for both?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So technically, USCIS does not say that like you cannot do H1B for two employers, like full-time a full-time occupation for two employers. The only thing is they understand that working 40 hours for each of them is very difficult, and like on a normal cadence, you won't be able to do 80 hours per week for any of the companies, or like that will affect your performance. So they usually don't like it.
okay. So now if I am an immigrant on an H1B visa,
Mhm.
the smartest thing for that I could do if I wanted to start my own company would be get a partner uh, who I trust, because legally there may not be any validation of it. So, say for example, like I'm starting a startup with Atit, right?
Mhm.
And Atit owns the company. Atit is the one who starts the company, and then his company, company X, files for my H1B. And because they are filing for my H1B, they have to have a proof of funds that they're able to pay me for the next 12 to 18 months. And I am filing for and they're filing for my concurrent H1B for part-time position, right? And then, so then that is how I actually can, or that I can actually start working for the startup along with keeping my job.
Yes, if your company allows it, if,
Correct.
like
Yes, of course.
yeah, with no conflict of interest. Yes.
Correct. But then going forward, I can actually leave my original employer also, and then just become an employee of Atit's company. And
Yes.
then the understanding and the trust has to be there between Atit and me about because I mean, in a sense, I want to be an owner of that company. That's why we started the company. But I cannot legally be both an employee
Right.
and an owner. So my
Right.
level of trust has to be at that level with Atit. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, Dax. I won't say you're fired.
Yes. And there are various other ways also. So like you can have a board of directors through which you can maintain your hire or fire status, and USCIS would allow that as well. Like the only thing is like you need to have a strong case of why are you doing that and like who are on your board of directors.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendation for any good lawyers you used? Because I know I don't think
Yes.
all H1B normal lawyers could deal with this. Or
Um, yes, I do have a few good lawyers, and like if someone needs help, like I can definitely like uh, make an introduction to them. So yeah, like we can provide a link or something for my email, and then I can take it from there. But
okay,
to
that's
you,
awesome.
yeah, to your point, I probably have talked to more than like 12 lawyers, and from that, like probably 10 of them did not know this. Like they are dealing into H1B, and like I would go to them and say that, okay, can I do this? And they would be like, yeah, you can do it. And then I know for a fact, like I have gone through the USCIS guidelines, and I know for a fact that you cannot do it. So like that's where my validation was that, okay, this lawyer does not know it.
So you need a good lawyer.
Yes, and thankfully, like we have that in place, and like now we have made good relationships with them, so like they are able to help other people get similar H1Bs as well.
Oh, nice. So in the future, going forward, do you have any plans of like starting your own? I mean, I don't know what you would call it, like an incubator or something where
Yes.
you could help like other immigrant founders.
Definitely. So, like as I mentioned before, like I spent probably 4 years figuring out how to start my own company, and I definitely don't want other people to go through the same time span because it's a lot of time and discouragement. Like I know so many people who are trying to start their own company, but they're like everywhere we go to or everywhere we read, it's like, okay, no, you cannot do this. But that probably might not be true. So, like what we are thinking of is probably an incubation model where you work with other founders who actually have great ideas and have the potential to execute on them, and then help them get navigate through this H1B thing.
Nice. That's great. So I guess maybe in a few months we'll have another update or another post where you're
Yes.
telling us about this new venture.
Definitely, I'd love to share it.
So just taking a different track now, we really want to learn about how you are managing like Blackbox right now, right? Because like I saw on your website and on the LinkedIn and on your LinkedIn page that you have team members who are in India as well. So you have a team in India and you have a team in the US. So how are you really managing having one company but two teams on two different continents?
Sure. So, yes, like most of our engineering team is based out of India, just because like I had a few connections there as well as like it definitely helps us maintain our costs as well, like considering we are a startup. So like the benefit that I had was like I had some previous connections there whom I had worked with previously. So I was just able to get them on board, get them excited for the vision, and they started working on the platform. So uh, to be honest, like there's a lot of complications when you work with an offshore team. Like one, you constantly have to be with them. So like my working hours are divided into like US hours and then India. So like I'm with the India team from like 7 in the evening to like 2 a.m. in the morning, because like you need to be there because like you don't have your representative in India, or you can get a partner in India whom you work with to figure out the engineering process. But I don't know if that is possible for most of the people. Uh,
So if I were to figure this out from the US, like would you have any recommendations on how to set it up? Like what are things to consider? I mean, you spoke about the time difference as being one. Are there any other difficulties?
a few difficulties that we faced were one, like how do you figure out who are our champions? So for example, if you have a team of 10 people in India, you need to have at least a few people whom you can trust blindly and say that, okay, like even if you step out, they should be able to take the team forward. So like just having that leadership bench in India as well, whom you trust enough, like that is super important. um, the the hiring piece, also, like initially I thought that like you would be able to get like talent at a very reasonable cost, but what I've been realizing is that is completely wrong, and like they are getting paid salaries that we would not even imagine of. So like money is not something that you would be able to compete with. Like obviously, like if you wanted to pay a US salary, you would not probably go to India. Like you would probably get someone here as well. But like the main thing that you have to get them excited with is the vision of your company. And if you get that, then like they'll be able to do it much better than like anyone who's just incentivized by money. Especially when you're starting a company, because you want people to be at the same wavelength that you are. Like people working pretty chill hours would probably not work the best for you.
Right. So I actually had a question. How do you manage the payroll system? Like, do you still, is Blackbox paying the offshore team, or do you have like an India
Um,
entity which pays them?
the legal way is just to have an India entity, or
Mhm.
sorry, the better way is to have an India entity and then take care of their payrolls, because the law here and there is different. Also, like what you
Right.
can do to make things simple is just hire them as consultants.
Let's talk about like some of your previous successes and failures, and if you have any kind of learnings from them, right? So, I mean, you've been doing side hustles since I guess you were 18 or 19, right? Or maybe even before that. And
Right.
how did you like? What are your learnings like from successes as well as failures?
Right. So I think I've learned much more from my past failures, and I have a bunch of them. So uh, like the like there are a couple of things that I learned which I used to take for granted. So one was like having a very diverse team. Initially, I felt that okay, you just need to concentrate on the technology, and if your product is good enough, you'll figure a way out. But at Blackbox, like if you see our co-founder, like the team of founders is very diverse. Like people are from sales background, people are from operations, and then I'm on the engineering side. And that what I've realized is it helps your team grow much quicker than what you expected to. Like each of them like masters in their own skills, and then you just concentrate on things that you do the best. So that was one. The second thing was I always undervalued the importance of relationships. So like at Facebook, I realized that um, however good your product is, you cannot get it through if you don't have a good relationship with the right set of people. Uh, and yeah, like the last one is obviously like people. Like while running the startup, like we were fortunate enough to get out of the ramen phase pretty quickly, but like if you're doing it for the money, it can get really taxing very soon. Like if you don't have the right uh, mindset in place, that like when we started we knew that we are going to take at least 1,000 days to get to where we want to. Like it's not going to be an overnight success, and it's never going to be. So like if people try to think that okay, like they'll start something and it will pick up like crazy, but people forget that okay, if it doesn't happen, then you actually discourage yourself, that okay, you thought it would work in 3 months, which was a very unrealistic expectation. So and then it affects you negatively. So don't do that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And for our listeners, you mentioned something called as ramen profitability, right? So
Yes.
that's actually a Paul Graham essay where he writes about the first task for any startup should be to get to ramen profitability. Basically, ramen
Right.
is a type of noodle, so we can call it Maggie for Indians, right? Like earn enough money as soon as you can so that you can afford Maggie. And if you do that, then you are then your startup goes from default dead to default alive. So basically, it's not going to die off by itself because you can at least generate enough income to feed yourself. So you had mentally prepared for 1,000 days before you would, start generating an income that you would be happy with. And it is something that I have seen with a lot of people that I know, that people start up with their expectation that within 3 months it's going to start blowing up, and then it doesn't happen, and then like the down part of the roller coaster happens. So like how do you prepare for that?
We actually knew that there was an already existing problem. So it was not that like we were trying to build a technology for something that we did not know like was there a requirement for it or not. It is a very validated problem, and so like we just needed to build it in the right way so that people could use it. And like we were able to go to our customers and say that, okay, like we have a product already built. You don't need to pay us for now. Like just test out our product, and if you like it, then we can talk about the economic part of it. So like we were able to like really identify what problem were we trying to solve, because even in this automated ad buying space, there's a lot of things that people go behind. And then we just said that, okay, no, like in the beginning we cannot do everything. We just need to do one thing and one thing really well. So we started there, and like that allowed us to make some money right off the bat, and hit the profitability phase.
If you could talk about, like you mentioned that you had mentally prepared for 1,000 days of, working on the startup before seeing even your first dollar. And many people go into starting their own company thinking in 3 months it's going to blow up, and really they're going to, take off, and it's going to be the
Right.
next Facebook or something like that. Uh, but then when it doesn't happen, they get discouraged, and it becomes a very low phase in their lives. And I don't know if you've seen that happen, if you've experienced it, but like, can you talk about like
For sure.
how can someone prepare for that?
For sure. So like it actually has happened to me 3 times before I actually understood that, okay, no, you cannot expect this to happen overnight. So like back in India, I was trying to build an e-commerce portal back in 2012, where people told me that, okay, no, this is not something that you can do. I started it and I could not get traction in the first month. And I'm like, okay, maybe people are right. And like e-commerce won't work in India. And I left that. When I came to USC, like we were working on an object recognition software, like the one that like Amazon is using to detect like if it's a shoe and then recommend you products around it. So that was back in 2014. I met with a Google AI research engineer, and he said that there's no way you're going to be able to compete with it. I tested it with 20 products, and then I could not scale it. And then I was like, okay, no, I'm not getting enough traction. So I again stopped it. In 2016, I was working on something called a smart cart, which is a competitor for Honey. Like I don't know if you're aware, but Honey got sold for 4.7 billion. So we
Yeah.
were actually at that time, like we were all neck to neck. We talked to the founders of Honey. They were super nice guys. Like, but then we tried to raise money like within the first 9 months. We were not able to raise money, and then we stopped that company again. Uh, so every time, like we tried to go farther, but then we realized that, okay, no, we're not making enough progress. But it was probably not. It was not that like we were not making enough progress. We just had unrealistic deadlines set with us that, okay, like we want to get this out in a year, but people have been spending multiple years behind it and they were still not able to crack it. So just having that right mindset that, okay, like this is going to take time, and are you ready for the hard work that is required to be put in?
Yeah, and hard work is, I guess, just one aspect of it, right? Like, I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of people who want to start a company, firstly, they are very ambitious. Secondly, they have sometime in their life, done a lot of hard work.
Right.
And but then there's also this component of being financially secure. Uh, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you come from a wealthy family, or if you don't have any responsibilities, then that doesn't become as much of a
Right.
problem. But then how does one prepare for starting a company financially?
Uh, I, I don't know if there's a right answer for it. So at least for me, like because I knew I always wanted to do it, like uh, uh, my wife and me were always like on the saving fund that, okay, like we need to have enough money in the bank. Like if ever you leave this, and you need to have 18 months of runway, so that like it does not start bothering you from day one. So like just having some money in the bank that you know that it's going to last you for a year is helpful. Like uh, every one of us wants to start a company, but like if you start a company, for example, today, and you don't have that planned out, you might get stressed, and like that will start showing up in your work. And this was an advice that I got from the founder of Cloudera. So like I met him and I asked him that, okay, like what's one advice that you would give me? And he said that, okay, stay at this company for some time more, so that you have enough money in the bank, so that like you won't make those bad decisions for your company.
Yeah, that's a great question you asked. the founder of
Yeah.
Cloudera. So I mean, I'm gonna turn that around for you as well.
Sure.
So what's one advice that you would give us, uh, that this is like you can forget about other things, but this is one thing that you shouldn't forget about.
Yeah, so there are two things that I usually try to evaluate all the opportunities by. So one is, like, life is going to be a marathon. It's not going to be that, okay, you're going to do this one gig and you're done with it. So, like, always try to think from a long term perspective as to, like, is this going to be beneficial for you in the longer term, or is it just a short term thing? And then the second thing, which is kind of related, is uh, that like when you're playing soccer, you have to be on the field for 90 minutes, but you're going to score only in that 1 or 2 minutes. So, like, you can't compare that 2 minutes to the 90 minutes. Like, you can't say that, okay, I'll just come on the field for 2 minutes, score a goal, and then go away, because it's not going to happen.
So yeah, thanks, Jay. I mean, this is a great great advice, two pieces of advice that you're leaving us with. And I would urge our listeners to contact us or contact Jay directly. His email will be in the description. And if you have any specific questions related to immigration, Jay, like he said, he spent 4 years trying to figure it out. And we, in a sense, all of us have it lucky that now we can contact you and ask you how to solve it. So thanks a lot, Jay, for coming on
Of
our
course.
show. And
Thanks for having me here. Yeah.
we wish Blackbox all the success. And
Thank you.
like you said, right, like in the 90-minute game, I think you're almost at halftime now in the next half,
Yeah.
and the
uh,
goal is coming.
uh, hopefully soon. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, for all your listeners, like, if you guys have any questions regarding like how to start your own company, or if there's any way I can help with, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. So,